There's a famous line from a classic mob flick that you could easily paraphrase when dissecting the Premier League's supposed chokehold on European football. The logic usually goes like this. First you get the money, then when you get the money, you get the power. Then when you get the power, you get the trophies. Or something like that. This week, however, offered a brutal, unforgiving reminder that while the English top flight undoubtedly hoards the wealth and flexes absolute dictatorial power in the transfer market, it does not possess the undisputed dominance over European football that the hype machine would have you believe. Look at the Champions League last 16. We're only at the halfway stage. Nobody's officially out yet, but 0 victories in 6 first legs. An aggregate scoreline of Europe 16, Premier League 6. Those are humbling, embarrassing numbers. Now, let's be fair. 5 of those 6 English teams are playing away from home. We have to factor that in. We also have to factor in the absolute never-ending circus that is Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, who somehow found themselves 4-0 down after just 23 minutes. But watch the rest of the games. Watching Manchester City get completely bulldozed by 3 Federico Valverde goals in a 23-minute blitz against Real Madrid. Watching Arsenal labour all stirred up these cold echoes of past European failures. You know what they looked like? They looked knackered. Frankly, they looked dead on their feet, exhausted in both mind and body. That's why we saw this sudden litany of defensive mistakes and rapid-fire collapses. The Premier League is probably the fastest, most intense league in the world, but you cannot replicate that heavy metal intensity every single week. It's biologically impossible. As we hit the business end of the season, legs get heavy, injuries mount, and performances drop off a cliff. We've seen it a million times. Players are at breaking point. Throw in a massive Club World Cup featuring Chelsea and City last summer, the Nations League, an expanded Champions League, the Europa League, and World Cup qualifiers, it's a meat grinder. And the wildest part? English teams get 0 help from their own schedule makers. Look at the contrast. Chelsea spent their weekend being dragged all the way to the end of extra time by Championship side Wrexham. Meanwhile, PSG, they were sitting on the couch. They got the entire weekend off because Nantes and the French league actually agreed they needed rest for Europe. That is an A on a Friday night, moved specifically to give them an extra 24 hours to prepare for Atalanta. In England, Newcastle and Man City were forced to go head to head, beating each other up late on a Saturday evening for the FA Cup. And it's not just the scheduling. The Premier League itself is a hindrance. This is a league where Wolves, a team heading for one of the worst top flight points tallies in history, can casually take 4 points of Arsenal and Liverpool in 2 weeks. No easy games isn't a cliche anymore, it's a curse. Just look at the weekend of January 24th and 25th. Liverpool loses at Bournemouth. Spurs draw at Burnley. Newcastle gets beaten at home by Aston Villa. But right around that same domestic disaster class, these teams were coasting in Europe. Liverpool beat Marseille and Karabag 9-0 on aggregate. Spurs comfortably beat Dortmund and Frankfurt 2-0, which incredibly are their only wins of the entire calendar year amidst a 12-game domestic winless streak. Newcastle hammered PSV 3-0 and drew at PSG. At the time, with 5 English teams finishing in the top 8 of the Champions League phase and a record 9 making the knockout stages across all competitions, it was so tempting to say England was king, but it's an illusion. Until English clubs dominate the winners lists, it means nothing. Look at the numbers. In the last 5 seasons, 4 of the 10 Champions League finalists were English, yielding 2 winners. Chelsea in 2021, City in 2023. Spain has the exact same number of winners, with Real Madrid in 2022 and 2024. Europa League, same story. 3 English finalists in 5 years. Only 1 winner, Spurs, last season. Spain has 2, Villarreal and Sevilla. There is no English dominance, not even close. You want to see real dominance? Look at La Liga from 2014 to 2018. They took 9 out of 10 Champions League and Europa League titles. 4 for Real Madrid, 1 for Barca, 3 for Sevilla, 1 for Atletico. Man United's 2017 Europa League win was the only outlier. Consistently cracking Europe is almost impossible for these guys. Even Pep Guardiola, he's won 6 Premier League titles in his 9 completed seasons, dominating England. But in Europe, 2 finals, 1 semi-final. And with a 3-0 deficit against Real Madrid, he's probably not fixing that this year. If Pep leaves City this summer, his ratio of domestic titles to his 1 single Champions League win in a decade will roughly mirror Sir Alex Ferguson's. And manager who operated when English teams were actually considered inferior. Next week, Arsenal should finish the job. Chelsea, Spurs and City could produce miracles. Liverpool might come from behind against Galatasaray, and Newcastle could pull off a historic shock in Barcelona. But this week gave us the truth. Bayern, Real Madrid and PSG share the exact same financial might as the Premier League clubs, but they don't share their exhaustion. When it really mattered, the European giants shifted gears. The English clubs hit a wall. History tells us we really shouldn't be surprised.